this cycle, we received, I think like 2,700 applications. So for our program, it's definitely competitive and we have a low single digit acceptance rate. Honestly, I'm not sure about other programs around the country and what their acceptance rates are, but ours is a pretty competitive program. 15 months are a pre-clinical studies and then 12 months of full-time clinical experience. And the clinical rotations are in internal medicine, pediatrics, emergency medicine, surgery, geriatrics, family practice, and OBGYN. And so those are completed in clinical studies throughout the Bay Area. I have heard of some students being able to set up rotations in other areas of the country, so that is a possibility. However, I think it's a process and you have to be proactive around it. So we do require a bachelor's degree, and this must be complete before applying to the program. So this last cycle, we had a whole number of applicants apply in April when they graduated in June. And so they weren't eligible because they didn't have their bachelor's degree at the time of their application. So just make sure that if you apply to Samuel Merritt, you have already you've completed your bachelor's degree. You know, we don't have a minimum, but the suggested minimum cumulative GPA is a 3.0. Our faculty will look at science GPA, overall GPA. For the science GPA, it's not just calculated on your hard sciences and your prerequisite coursework, but it's all of the science coursework that you've taken, and that's how they come up with that GPA. 1,000 hours is a minimum, but it's recommended to be competitive in our PA program that you have substantially more than 1,000 hours. We did do away with our requirement of 50 hours of shadowing experience of a PA, but we do require a letter of recommendation from a PA, and we highly recommend, even though we did away with that requirement, that you definitely shadow a PA, and you're going to want to do that to inform your decision as to whether this is going to be the right field for you. Has anyone shadowed a PA already? Okay, great. Is it hard to find clinical experience here in Tucson, would you say?
More or less. I mean, I think it's kind of difficult everywhere being an undergraduate. The opportunities are kind of limited unless you're willing to spend like a lot of money or get an opportunity for like UAMS or an internship or something like that. But we're working on it.
Does the medical center let you volunteer as students? Do they have a program set up?
They have programs, but they're very strict on letting people in, and there is a long wait list to be accepted as a volunteer.
You know, when I worked for Ross University, the head of the pre-health advising department, her name was Josie Jim Morgan. I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She would set up this pre-health blast every year at the medical center. And I talked to the new advisor, and I think they're going to start that over again, which is really a great event. So if you have a chance to go to it, I would recommend it. So 3 letters of reference are required. And prerequisites. Are most of you bio majors or is it a combination? Okay. So for biological sciences, we require 16 semesters or 24 quarter units I know the University of Arizona is on the semester system, is that correct? So human anatomy is going to comprise of the 16 semester credits. Human physiology, microbiology, and then any biology that's like an elective will count towards that. We do require stats. We're pretty lenient on what kind of stats it is, so if it's psychology stats or any other kind of stats course, we can take that. And then inorganic or general chemistry, 4 semester credit units, or 6 quarter units. And that should be with a lab, and then organic chemistry, 4 semester units as well with a lab. So all of these prerequisites, as well as your bachelor's degree, must be complete by the time of application. So the types of healthcare experience that we typically will accept are any kind of EMT experience, paramedic. If you were a certified nursing assistant, a phlebotomist, a medical scribe, an RN or a medic, that's not an entire list of what we will accept, but it's a pretty common background of students that apply. Any international students in the house? No. So the process, applications are due on September 1st for the cycle. So there's just one class per year and it's in the fall. So they're due by September 1st and they become available in the month of May. When you apply to our program, you apply through CASPA, which is CASPA is the portal where all of the PA programs around the country apply to. So you don't send application materials directly to the schools you're applying to. You send it all to CASPA. And then the verification takes 4 to 6 weeks. So once CASPA receives your transcripts, they have to verify it before we start reviewing applications. We do have interviews, and so out of that 2,500 applications, we only interview 144 for a class of 44. And so interviews are held between December and February of each year. And then admissions offers come in January to March. So to be a competitive PA applicant for our school, you need a bachelor's degree complete by application, prerequisites completed by application, have a 3.0 plus GPA cumulative, and science GPAs as calculated by CASPA, 1,000 plus hours of the healthcare experience, and that you demonstrate adequate exposure and knowledge of the PA profession. So when you're going to be assessed in your interview, that's one thing they're going to be looking at is how familiar you are with what a PA does, what the field is like for a PA. And then outstanding letters of reference. So what I would recommend is, obviously it's kind of a no-brainer, but I'll say it anyway. You know, when you pick a professor to write a letter of recommendation or your PA, just make sure that you get to know them so that they can write about your character and your experience and what it's been like with their interaction with you, so that it's a substantive letter. Yes.
Does it matter what kind of subject the professor teaches, or it could be just someone that knows your character better?
I think. I think that I would pick someone. Who knows your character better. But having said that, if you have a science professor that knows your character well, I think that. Would be better to submit than like a liberal arts course. Just because that the science professor can attest to your study habits, what kind of student you are. So I would recommend the preference would be with the science professor. So my colleague, Edgardo, he has information sessions on our website. And also virtual Q and As that you can drop in, so I really highly recommend that you. If you didn't receive a card and you're interested in finding out more information, I can certainly give that out to you. I just want to briefly talk about our Podiatric School of Medicine. It's been around since 1914, it's also in Oakland. It's a medical school that is 4 years, just like a DO or an MD program with a 3-year residency. The unique thing about our podiatry program is that you get early hands-on clinical experience. It's not as competitive as our PA program. But it's a great career podiatry. Not only are you trained as a physician, but you're also guaranteed training as a surgeon. So when you go through an MD or a DO program, you have to gain a surgical residency in order to be a surgeon. As a podiatrist, you're automatically trained, you're guaranteed the training as a surgeon of the lower extremities, which would be foot and ankle. And so that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned with the clinical year, I have like 2 questions. Are there any elective rotations? And then also, do the PA students like themselves have to find their clinicals with the faculty?
So you do not have to find your clinicals by yourself. So the school assists you in that, and we have affiliations with clinics and hospitals around the Bay Area. As to your first question, I'm gonna have to get back to you on it. And I have my card, so I'll give you my card and shoot me that question, and I will get you an answer to it. Yes.
For patient care experience, is it preferred paid or you guys can volunteer?
Both are acceptable. Yes.
I don't know if you mentioned this, but do you guys not require the GRE for your score? Do you
Good
require?
question. We are not requiring the GRE for our program. Sure.
Do you think the athletic training, if it's hands-on and like direct patient care is good experience, or do you think the CNA is like better experience to go to?
I think it depends on the environment for the athletic training. What's the environment?
I'm doing it at the football facility here, so it's like,
Is it rehab focused at all?
yeah, I would say so.
Okay, well, I think if it's rehab focused. And are you working alongside PTs?
Yeah, and just like athletic training techs, and a lot of it is like, it is rehab focused, like injuries and cupping, like it has a wide range. There's physicians there as well.
Then I would say yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I have some questions from online.
Okay.
So the first, the first one is, if a letter of rec from a professor is required, how should we go about it if we're fully online? None of them know them in person, so they don't have like direct contact. What would you suggest?
So before I answer that question, so we do accept online prerequisites, just so everyone knows. And then there's a question, will the program accept prerequisites completed as pass fail? And the answer to that is yes. The program will accept prerequisites completed on a pass fail basis, beginning with spring 2020 and continuing until further notice. All completed prerequisites must have a passing. But to get to your question, which is letters of recommendation from an online professor. Is the question around the difficulty of getting a professor that's online because you really have a more difficult time building a relationship?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that answer, that nuance there. And maybe make a recommendation on how you would handle that. So I think that two of the letters at least have to be from a healthcare provider. So I don't think you need more than one academic letter of recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then we have two more questions from online. How important is applying early in the application process, and when should an applicant ideally apply for PA programs? Like, what is the timeline?
So the timeline for us is, and it would be for all programs, they open up the application in May and the deadline is September 1st. So we're already giving out decisions for this upcoming cycle.
Okay.
In terms of timing, you know, you'll want to time it so that you have all your prerequisites completed and your bachelor's degree. And I would say once you have that, I would be on it. I think the sooner the better.
Is your program like rolling admissions? So if you apply earlier, do you have a higher chance of getting in versus if you apply later in the cycle?
We do not have rolling admissions for the PA program. So if you apply within that time frame that I just gave you, your application will be guaranteed review by faculty and you will be considered for the program.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, as an admissions counselor, do you believe PA schools put stock into an applicant taking some of their prerequisites at a community college versus taking them at their original four-year college?
So I don't know about Arizona and the community colleges here. I can just speak to California. And there's no bias against students getting their coursework from community college in California. They're feeder schools into our UC system and they're considered very good. I assume that Arizona community colleges are considered good too. And I can't imagine our faculty biasing students based on that. That would be my answer.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any advice for interviews and how to stand out in interviews?
Yes, so I would just be as natural as possible. Make sure your answers aren't scripted, you know. It's always good to do some research about PA interviews in terms of common asked questions. I think that you really want to convey why you're passionate about the field of PA in the interview. You want to be professionals, you want to be dressed professional for your interviews, obvious. But you really want to try to make a connection with the person that's interviewing. So maybe try and make eye contact show not only that you're able to answer questions well, but that you're a good listener. So those would be my recommendations to have a good interview. I think that be prepared to ask how you became interested in PA. I think that applicants that stand out in interviews are able to describe their well-rounded experiences in the medical field. If you have community service in your background, I think it's good to talk about that, or at least put that in your application. I think that always helps as well. And then lastly, I would say, know about the program that you're applying to, because you're likely to be asked why Sam Milner University as one of your options. Yes,
Are the interviews included like MMIs or is it just?
we do not have MMIs, it's done with faculty to it.
Can you talk a little bit about personal statements and how you guys incorporate that into like interviews or just application?
So we do have a personal statement. And what I recommend in terms of that is answer what you're being asked of for the personal statement. And again, well, grammar is of course very important when you write personal statements, and just personalize it, right? I think those make the best personal statements. Personalize it. You know, talk about your background, how it has shaped your decision to want to go into this profession. Yes.
Have you personally read any personal statements? Like, could you speak to one that you remember and kind of the qualities of that statement or what they talked about?
Well, I did when I worked in medical school admissions, so not so much for the PA program, but when I worked for medical school admissions, I would interview prospective students. And so the ones that always stood out for me were the ones that had international medical mission experience, or they were immigrants that overcame a lot of obstacles to even come to this country, and what it was like in, you know, where they were born in terms of the medical care that is provided around the world. And so those kind of stories were the most compelling, I think. But you don't have to have that experience to write a compelling personal statement. Okay. Yes.
You mentioned international like medical experience. What do you consider like international volunteer? Like, it might not be medical, but like if we're going somewhere and just volunteering, like I have a group that goes to Malawi, like, do you think that would be something we should write in our personal statement or leave that out? Like if it's just about volunteering there and like giving help to them instead of like medical care.
So an experience like that should definitely go in your application, right? And talk about it. In terms of whether I would put it in a personal statement, it depends on the level of exposure you had to the healthcare system there while you were there. So you probably, did you see, you know, quite a bit?
I'm going next month, so I haven't gone yet, but I'm.
Well, you'll probably see a lot of poverty there in Malawi. And if you can talk to how it kind of correlates with your desire to be a PA and treating patients, then I would do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Gigi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
for coming.
Thank you, everyone. I have my card here. And, if you want additional information, I also have those inquiry cards that I filled out. I didn't give them to everyone. If you want to come up and fill one out, we can get you additional information about our program. Thank you so much.
I'm just gonna check the chat to make sure there's like no last questions. No, it looks like we're good. So thank you. How do I stop?